So thank you guys for pressing play on this video again today. Today we're going to talk about injection attacks. So previously we talked about Security Plus, and then we talked about malware, types of malware. So today we're going to talk about another type of attack. They're called injection attacks, right? Now, what are injection attacks? So injection attacks, um, they are when a hacker or an attacker decides to they exploit a database, right? SQL or some kind of application. They want to basically get into it or acquire some information out of the system. How do they do that? So they rely basically on user input fields to trick the database into giving them information about the database, so then they can try to traverse around the user input fields or even make the application execute certain kinds of code and give them access to the database, or just have them spit information back out at them that they want to acquire. What's the threat? So if you have a business, what is the threat to your business? Well, unaddressed, if you don't address that injection vulnerability, then your servers can be exploited. You could be potentially vulnerable to releasing customer information that you didn't know about. Especially if you're a business executive, you don't know a lot of the technical side of the organization. Maybe you focus more on, interfacing with the business executives, and you're working primarily with the financial institutions and the vendors that keep the lights on your business. If you're not educated about this stuff, you don't understand the database systems that are working seamlessly through the night to keep your business running. If there's somebody outside the organization that starts to learn more about the internal workings of your infrastructure, they can really get some potentially damaging information. They could get into your systems, they could get customer data, and then end up selling it on the black market. They can also bring your entire production to a standstill. You basically stop business for whatever length of time. That's another threat there. Where is your organization vulnerable? So if, again, another example, if you have an omni-channel program where you have multiple services that are interfacing with multiple databases that have to communicate with one another, you can be vulnerable. Or if you decide not to migrate off of a legacy application, then that can be an issue as well. There could be potentially more vulnerabilities in legacy applications and databases. So older databases, typically the longer that they're out, the more vulnerabilities are going to become known to the public. So those can be high risk, especially in the customer and financial fields. What are some variants of injection attacks? So 5 of the most dangerous types of injection attacks: SQL, cross scripting, um, code injection. So SQL and code injection kind of go hand in hand. And then OS command injections and XXE injections. Again, all of these are different variants of injecting some kind of command into a user input field in order to get the database to give you more information. And each one just depends on the database that's in question. Cross scripting can even be on web browsers. You're just trying to get some kind of GIF layering onto the website, and then tricking people into going into a different area on the website, or redirecting their proxy to go to a different location. Who is impacted? So critical businesses are impacted if they don't mitigate correctly. Interested parties can directly impact the organization by bringing it to a standstill, especially if they have a lot of financial information. Investment portfolios are very sensitive. Private customer data, those are really the key things that are really sensitive in these kind of attacks. What are some historical examples? So that's all well and nice, right? But have you ever heard of a SQL injection? Or what are some of the most prominent SQL injection attacks that have occurred? Heartland Payment Systems at 7-Eleven and Hannaford Brothers were exploited by SQL injection attacks, and that was all directed at stealing again, payment information. So they're going after credit card numbers, PIN numbers, things like that. Even hacktivist groups, a hacktivist group called Red Hack, they implemented this against the Turkish government with a SQL injection attack back in June 2013. So not only are financial criminals using this methodology, but so are, terrorists and hacktivist groups, as they like to call themselves, politically motivated parties or hackers. The FBI and the CISA put out a security advisory in 2020 confirming that Russian hackers actually had used SQL injections to traverse through confidential government information. What are the statistics? So the statistics of these SQL injects are actually quite alarming. 65% of all web application attacks are made up of SQL injection vulnerabilities. Also, privacyrights.org has also estimated that an average of 71 injection attacks per hour occurred from 2005 to 2011. So those are some pretty alarming numbers if you really think about it. 65% of all web application attacks. And it's really just about the nature of the attack, right? Some of these databases, they run a certain way. And if you put certain commands into an input field, then you can get it to do things, right? You just have to find the right sequence, especially if the owner of those databases isn't writing their program or their code correctly. What can you do? So I kind of just spoke about that briefly, right? There's no magic bullet. The best defense against an injection is education and enlightenment, making sure your coders are using best security practices when they're writing the code for their services on those database systems. Basically, you want to try to restrict the user input values as much as possible. Maybe give them drop-down boxes. Don't let them type in full-blown commands. Don't let certain characters be accepted by the database. So those are just some small examples of what you can do. But again, it just it takes constant monitoring. It takes accounting systems to make sure that people are held accountable, and then also it takes education. How do we continue to improve the defense, right? So again, developers need to be heard. They need to be put in a comfortable situation where they can talk about where they feel like they are vulnerable in their database applications and in their program coding. If they're rushed to meet certain deadlines, that's going to make systems a lot less secure. They need to have a voice. They need to have the comfortability to voice how they feel, because that gives them, the business critical insight on how their business operations run, and the most valuable player on the software security team is going to be the coders and the people that are in there writing the code for those applications every single day. So that's SQL injections. I appreciate you guys listening again. Love you for listening, and take care. Signing off. Cheers.